And thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Okay.
The mental health issue and the homelessness issue is what I would do if it were up to me to reform the system, is that nobody would be allowed to be homeless. Nobody would be allowed to be homeless.
Lima said if she could implement a program, if she had her way, nobody would be allowed to be homeless. This is very, very important because this idea of being allowed to be homeless is going to permeate throughout the entire interview. And this was posted May 18th, 2021. If Lima could reform the system, nobody would be allowed to be homeless.
It's not a choice. It's not a choice. I am going to attempt to kill you. I'm going to get arrested for attempted murder because I am hurting someone else. However, if I am hurting myself, I'm going to get 5150 in California. And there's other names for it in other states, but basically forced into a psychiatric hospital.
Lima just said somebody who's putting themselves in a position where they are constantly being S word assaulted, they shouldn't have an option to be homeless because they are harming themselves. Now, this is an extraordinarily slippery slope because, first of all, we have the dog whistles, right? S word assault. We have other dog whistles like homelessness, addiction, mental health, all these dog whistles flying around, and they get your nervous system on fight or flight just to hear it, just to think about it, just to imagine it. And there's really no clear outline of what exactly Lima's talking about, right? Like she's not saying if you're putting yourself constantly in a situation where you're going to be S word assaulted, then you shouldn't have freedom.
Somebody that is on the streets abusing drugs, somebody that's putting themselves in a situation where they're constantly being sexually assaulted, where they're constantly being violently beaten.
Also, I just want to take this as an opportunity to remind y'all that within the last few weeks, Lima went on to Adam 22 No Jumper podcast and said she herself back in 2020 was experiencing the same type of thoughts, that she wanted to harm herself. She wanted to jump off a bridge. She didn't want to go on. She didn't want to continue on.
So it was Thanksgiving 2020. And, my husband and I were fighting about money. I felt like I lost my sisters. I didn't know how I was going to maintain Amanda in treatment. Everything was just falling apart. I was like, I can't make payroll. I don't know how to tell my team. And so I I took a lift to a bridge in downtown Chicago, and I left without my jacket. And I told my husband, he was trying to give me my jacket, and we were arguing the whole time. And I was like, I don't need it where I'm going. And he called the police because he kind of understood what I meant. And obviously, his whole family's there. Super embarrassing. And then I got to the bridge, and I
The Lyft
realized
driver's family was there?
no. My husband's whole family was there for
Oh,
Thanksgiving.
right.
So we got married in 2019,
Uh-huh.
and this was like my like Thanksgiving with his family as us being married, and this is like the
Right.
introduction. And so I took a lift from the house because we were arguing, plus like all the other stress I had. I'm like,
To the
everybody
bridge.
to the bridge in Chicago, and I'm like, I'm just gonna kill myself. So I get to the bridge, and it's so low. And I'm like, if I jump off this thing, I'm going to survive. And then we're going to have helicopters. And then everyone's going to be like, mental health founder. I'll probably end up on the No Jumper Instagram account.
Yeah.
Mental health
I
founder,
could see that.
CEO jumps off the bridge.
And again, I want to reiterate, I'm not making fun of her. I believe her. And I think that's very tragic that she went through that. But the same woman who just came out and admitted that she's had those type of thoughts and feelings is telling y'all a year ago that people who are going to harm themselves should not have the freedom to make their own decisions at all. Listen to her.
Somebody that is on the streets abusing drugs, somebody that's putting themselves in a situation where they're constantly being sexually assaulted, where they're constantly being violently beaten, it's their freedom to make the decision too. But if you scanned everybody's brain, you would see that they were incapable of making their own decisions. And I truly.
Here's Lima talking about brain scans. if you scan the brain of people, you would see they were incapable of making their own decisions. Listen to what she said one more time.
You know, it's their freedom to make the decision too. But if you scanned everybody's brain, you would see that they were incapable of making their own decisions.
How do you scan someone's brain with that as a metric? Because in this society, theoretically, human beings, is particularly citizens of the United States of America, are inherently endowed with the ability to make our own decisions. It's a freedom that we have here. And in order to lose that freedom, the freedom to express yourself, the freedom to make your own decisions about what? Lima's very unclear. She just says they don't have the mental ability to make their own decisions. That is confusing to me. If a person is disabled, if a person has a condition, if a person has a diagnosis, it shouldn't and is not supposed to matter. That's why we have equal protection under the law. So here we have Lima talking about if you were to scan somebody's brain, the brain scan would tell you whether someone can make their own decision. That is just preposterous. If anything, a jury of your peers, after due process and equal protection, should be deciding whether or not someone can make their own decisions, but not a brain scan. And what brain scan? Have y'all ever had a brain scan that was going to tell you whether you could make your own decisions? And let's talk about the slippery slope of if that technology even did exist and it was being used in the way that Lima is proposing it be used. That would be extremely Orwellian. It would be terrifying because that means somebody owns that brain scan technology. This is Lima talking about this, y'all. Well, just imagine that technology exists and now we're going to use it in clinics and things. What's to stop that technology from being faulty? How many checks and things has it gone through? And who's the decider of the threshold? Right? Yeah, a brain scan could tell you something, but what does a brain scan tell you? It tells you what the humans who programmed that algorithm and the coders who wrote the code think and believe it means for you to not be capable of making your own decisions, right? Even from one doctor to another doctor, their personal opinion on whether someone can make their own decision will and often does differ. And that's why in conservatorship cases, you often have two doctors fighting with each other through lawyers over their opinions. So I am very extremely leery of this brain scan telling me whether or not I have the ability to make my own decisions technology. I don't know that that even exists, but here's Lima 8 days after Amanda died in court-ordered treatment after being forced into it, sitting here talking about brain scans deciding whether or not you can make your own decisions, right?
And I truly believe that there should be three things that should be done. It should either be, if you're homeless, you need to seek a homeless shelter. You have a place to stay. If you don't want to commit to a program, don't commit to a program, but you can go and sleep in a homeless shelter every night. No one should be sleeping out in the streets. It's not safe. It's not hygienic.
Dog whistle, dog whistle. Whenever you're talking about the homelessness crisis, you also have to be careful that you're not doing stuff to actually exacerbate the problem, which means making it worse. All right. And I believe that any solution to homelessness or mental health that doesn't begin with the fundamental understanding that human beings have free will and the freedom of choice and medical autonomy, then it's going to make everything worse. I just believe that.
It's not okay. Nobody should be treated like that. Number two, if
you see how she changed it from you shouldn't be allowed to be homeless to nobody should be treated like that. And you'll see she very often glances down at her notes to keep herself on track. But you hear her saying, you shouldn't be allowed to be homeless. You should have to go to a homeless shelter. Living on the street is unsafe. Dog whistle. Unsafe according to who? It can be. I've seen it. It can be. I'm not meaning to minimize it. But the issue is she's using these real facts to bolster an argument that eliminates people's ability to choose their own path and their own way out of this situation.
you don't want to go to a homeless shelter, then you should be sent to a psychiatric hospital.
So Lima said, if it was in my reality, I would do one of three things. You would have three options. One, homeless shelter. People shouldn't be allowed to be homeless, so they should have to spend the night in the homeless shelter. They should have to. It shouldn't be their choice. If you don't want to go to the homeless shelter, Lima says you should be committed against your will to a psychiatric facility. Okay.
People think of all these horror movies when they think of a psychiatric hospital, but
Asylum.
I'm speaking as a sister. I'm speaking as a family member of, people that I love to death, that I don't want to end up on the street, that I don't want to end up in Amanda's situation, that I don't want to end up in a place where they're harming themselves. That if you're not willing to admit yourself into a homeless,
taking people off of the street because she doesn't want them on the street, right? So she uses dog whistles and buzzwords and golden token words like sister, family member, right? To elicit a response in your brain to think of your sister or your family member and what would you want? But y'all, the reality is what you want shouldn't decide for someone else what to do. That's not acceptable. Okay. But here's Lima. I'm speaking as a sister and as a family member who doesn't want my family member to die. Dog whistle, dog whistle, dog whistle. None of us want to be forced into something. None of us want to be pushed into a medical facility that we're not consenting to go to.
if you're not willing to willingly admit yourself into a rehabilitation facility, and again, assuming that we can open up more rehabilitation facilities by incentivizing these private paid facilities to work with insurance companies.
Money, 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 money.
And making it beneficial for both. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. But and then if you're not willing to take one of those two choices, then a psychiatric hospital, because psychiatric hospitals will just sedate you because they have so many people that are on edge. So they give them sedatives, they have a TV room, and they have a bed to sleep in a room, and they check your blood pressure out every now and then. We'll walk up to you and be like, Kevin, any thoughts of suicide today? No? Okay. And then they walk away, and that's your entire day. So if you don't want to make the commitment to get better, then at least as a family member, I know that you're safe in a psychiatric hospital. And if you want to leave.
What? As a family member, I know you're safe somewhere. Listen to this logic, y'all. As a family member, Lima said, I know you're safe somewhere where they are already overcrowded, where there's already not enough doctors to check on so many patients. And maybe they come up to you and ask you a question or two here and there, and you're forced onto drugs and you're sedated. Lima's saying that is what should happen to people. And we as family members should be like, yeah, at least I know you're safe. No, this is why. This is the fundamental starting place of the disagreement that Lima and I have, is that I don't believe that that is appropriate to say I'm your family member, and so therefore your decisions are not the decisions I want you to make. Your decisions are not the things that I want you to do. And so for that reason, you should be sedated, forced into an asylum. She's talking about institutionalizing people in places where she admits are not good care. She admits that it's already a huge problem, and her solution is to make that the fallback plan for anyone who doesn't want to admit themselves into a homeless shelter.
You're allowed to leave, but you can only leave not on the street, but instead to a rehab.
And you're stuck there forever. She's saying you could be allowed to leave, but you can only leave if you have a home, a house. How could someone like, just the logistics of that don't even make sense, y'all. Let's say you have someone falls on hard times, gets addicted to drugs, admits themselves into a homeless shelter, leaves off the street, gets put in the psychiatric ward, and now they want to leave. Okay. How would they apply for a job from inside the psychiatric ward? How would they get any help? What if they don't have family to help them? What are you talking about? It's like, this is actually the absolute worst case scenario. Like, it's her plan. If she was put in charge of reform, first thing would be you have to go to a homeless shelter or you have to go to a rehab. If you don't admit yourself into there, you have to go to a psychiatric institution, an asylum. And the only way you can ever leave is if you have a home to go to. Can y'all see how that could be a circle that you just get stuck in for the rest of your life with no due process, no equal protection, no jury of your peers? Have a home and be able to afford it and stay in there and be a productive, functioning member of society, aka daddy capitalism, or go to an insane asylum for the rest of your fam life. Those are the options Lima has just said. That's what she just said.
Rehab where you're willing to go. And if you choose to leave rehab, you either go back to the psychiatric hospital or you can go to a homeless shelter, or you can go back to rehab. Those are the only. And if someone gets very violent, then they should be taken to jail.
Clarify that jail, not like prisons, right?
Jails and prisons.
Okay.
And y'all don't forget, Lima's business before Aura was called The Last Star. And that was specifically for diverting people from prison to not being incarcerated. I mean, I never saw the business model. I never saw the business plan, but I do want to point that out here because it seems like she's very preoccupied. You shouldn't be allowed to make your own choices. And instead, people like Lima should make your choices for you.
But what we do is we also do voice analysis, so we can detect depression in the voice, we can detect anxiety in the voice, we can detect post-traumatic stress disorder.
Imagine you're like one of the patients that uses this, right? And they're like, "How do you feel today?" And you're like, "I feel fine." And it's like, well, according to the voice analysis, you're about to kill yourself. Wee woo, let's lock you up. Like, can you imagine like being gaslit? Like you're trying to talk about what your feelings are. And it's like, according to all of the biometric data that we're collecting on you in real time, you're lying to us. Like, imagine your therapist gaslighting you like that.
If you tell me, that you're fine, we could say your voice is very flatline and it's showing that he's disconnected from his emotions. Exhibit voice is very flatline and it's showing that he's disconnected from his emotions, symptoms of PTSD. So the voice is actually very rich in data. For the more severe patients, you can use something like the virtual reality system. And so with Amanda, what we did, because she was a worker and she was also addicted.
She was a S worker. She was addicted to buzzword, dog whistle.
To crack cocaine was her drug of choice. But before she was cleared for it to be released, we actually put her in a virtual reality version of Skid Row. So there were tents everywhere. There were prostitutes. There was drugs. We measured biofeedback, how she was feeling. We measured how long it took for her to calm down. We measured how long it took for her craving levels to go down. We measured, we determined if she was able to use the coping skills and strategies that she learned with her therapist. Then you have outpatient, where people might have these tiny homes of their own, or instead what I would do is kind of have like these bigger homes where it's communal living room, communal space, but then like sober living. So you put someone in charge and you constantly drug test these.
And when she says stuff like this, my first instinct is to ask myself, or ask in my head, who's in charge, right? So all this stuff sounds good and great, right? Like, oh, there's someone in charge. But it's like, but who? Who's going to be in charge?
So this site here is LA's first tiny home village. Go out into a catchment zone, which is somewhat about 3.5 miles. And the very first thing that's going to happen is we're going to go pick you up in our van, we're going to bring you in, and you're going to go through security. We're going to lay everything that you own out here, and we're going to go through it to make sure there's no drugs, alcohol, or weapons. So as soon as you've gone through that, you're going to come in and you're going to experience our tiny homes. So come straight through here, and we'll kind of show you what it's like to join our tiny home community.
And who's going to pay that person? And where are their conflicts of interest going to come in? Right? Like, are they going to work for the state? Is that not the state? Is that not a prison at that point, that you're forced to be there? You can't leave and the state has somebody watching you. If it's a prison, why didn't the person get all their due process? Why didn't the person get to go to court? Why didn't the person get to argue to a judge with a public defender why they should be allowed to make their own decisions? Is it going to be a Lima? Is it going to be a private investor type of person who's going to be in charge? Is it going to be someone who maybe just got out of this program themselves and maybe should have a lot more training? Is it going to be someone who even knows what they're doing? None of that is discussed. It's just, oh yeah, we're going to put someone in charge and they're going to be in charge. And it's like, But this is a half-ass, half-baked plan. If you're just going to put someone in charge, there's a lot of questions that go into this.
The people that are living there.
So on this residential, I'm still a little lost here. So you said that's 24/7. Is this like, you can't leave kind of thing? Is that what level 2 is?
Residential, you cannot leave. 24/7 gated.
That makes sense. Now, I have seen, because I think those are also sometimes called group homes, and like private investors
Money, money, money.
put in like the towel dispensers and the fire extinguishers and that. I've seen it before.
If you put these people in this 4 football fields community and they live there
So the notion of creating these little communities that are about the size of 4 football fields. But what Lima is about to talk about relates to these small communities that I guess are like state funded. But there's going to be a little bit of disagreement between Lima and Kevin, because Lima does not think people should be allowed to leave. And Kevin does seem to be a little confused by that prospect.
long term, depression will ensue. I'm stuck here and it's just,
you have to have the right to leave and be rehabilitated,
but
right?
not even the right to leave. It would more likely be like a 1-year program. Like, you have to complete this program. You ended up homeless. We're here to help you. You are going to get help. And
you ended up homeless. You have to be here and you are going to get help. You ended up homeless. So just the homelessness in and of itself is bad enough where you should lose your freedoms and liberties for 1 year. And the exact particular type of help that Lima has concocted in her head should be what is imposed on you for at least a year. Let's listen further.
Okay, you can just come and go whenever you please. If you are not choosing one of these options, then you're putting yourself at risk. So to protect,
at risk for what?
You have to have the right to leave and be rehabilitated,
but
right?
not even the right to leave. It would more likely be like a 1-year program. Like, you have to complete this program. You ended up homeless. We're here to help you. You are going to get help. And so, so it shouldn't be, okay, you can just come and go whenever you please. If you are not choosing one of these options, then you're putting yourself at risk. So to protect you, to work in your best interest for you, because you are putting yourself at risk by being homeless, you have to complete a 1-year program. Drugs and alcohol are mood alterers. If you don't know how to alter your mood, and when you're not taking anything, you feel like you're not enough and you haven't dealt with why it is, because it doesn't even have to be drugs or alcohol, like workaholics. I'm not enough. I just have to stay in the office.
Okay, y'all. The slope done got as slippery as I think it can get. If you're a workaholic, you better get your ass in the internment camp for a year. Like, what is she talking about? Ever, really, but right now specifically.
And please, people.
I gotta ask you. So the no come and go, the 1-year program, it sounds to me like those are for the people who went through the detox residential, then outpatient. What about for the people who have fallen on, like, they're because they're there. Folks who are capable, they could get a job, and they just became homeless. They just got evicted. They're just at the start. Can those folks be entered directly into outpatient, but then maybe have the right, like, here's your key, come and go as you want. Try to get a job. You need to be here and shower. You've got that option. Something like that.
Yeah. So if they are not abusing drugs and they don't have an eating disorder and it's not a mental health condition, then what I would do is therapy. So something along the lines of telehealth. So Aura has that in the application, tracking regardless.
So what she would do in her reform world is forced therapy on people who are homeless. Lima, not a doctor, not a mental health certified professional in any way that I could tell, is telling y'all that no matter what, if you're homeless, you're going to be depressed. I'm just curious what Lima thinks people did before these major cities like existed in our society. Like, what is even homelessness? You don't rent an LA apartment. Like, what if you're staying with your friend and your name's not on the lease? Are you homeless? None of this stuff is defined at all. It's just buzzwords, right? And she's saying, if you're homeless, even if you're capable, even if you just fell on hard times, you should be mandated into therapy, and then takes an opportunity to plug Aura and tell y'all how Aura could be used in that circumstance. It's very transparent.
You're going to have to track people's mental health progress, even if it's not an addiction, because it could be anything and someone could all of a sudden have a bad day and want to end it all.
Kind of like Lima says that she did in Chicago, Thanksgiving 2020.
I've never had a suicidal moment in my life, but I was like, I'm just going to kill myself.
Was she mandated into a year-long treatment program? I don't believe she was. So the fact that she is advocating for that to happen to others is completely mind-blowing.
So, being homeless is a way of, even if you start off okay, you will become very depressed. You will feel like you're stuck, and you'll end up with a lot of problems. So there needs to be someone for you to talk to. So in that case, the most economical way to do it is telehealth sessions. So they're just video calls while they're being monitored.
A question that I just can't help but keep asking myself is, who's doing what with that data, right? I mean, I know that everything is collecting all our data at all times, but I can't help but just wonder. So you're forced into a 1-year rehab program, and then you're forced in that rehab program to do video telehealth conferences with someone who's constantly recording your data. And then what are they doing with it when they collect it? I mean, I'm sure it's HIPAA compliant. That's not my issue at this point. But when it's like private health companies, it's like, who's going to own that data in the future? Data is forever, and what are they going to do with it? And I just have questions, and I haven't really seen Lima address these specifically.
And they should still live in that tiny community.
Job placement. Are they going to place people in the jobs where they become the prison guards? Do y'all see how this system could work? You get pulled up off the street, your freedom's taken away, you're stuck in a thing for a year. They successfully maybe rewire your brain or whatever they want to call it. And now they help you with job placement. Now, we already know the beginning of this whole rat trap was that you were homeless, right? So don't end up homeless, even if it's not your fault. Even if it's a total, like, you're capable, you just lost your job. Y'all just heard Lima say it yourself. Even if it's not your fault, even if you're not on drugs, even if you're not an addict, even if you're not committing crimes, you should still be monitored by the state, because at any moment you might do something. At any moment you might have a mental health crisis. You might want to end it all. And for that reason, you should be being monitored, and your data should be being collected by the state. And then at the end of this whole thing, you get offered a job like Larry Rabb did and like Amanda Rabb did. They both got offered a job placement. Amanda wanted to go to nursing school or whatever, but we had Lima giving her a job. Larry Rabb, as we speak, works for Aura. So doesn't it kind of look like that's already sort of starting to happen? And then what if those people need to speak up? What if those people need to say, wait, this is messed up? Well, they might lose their job they just got help getting placed into. And if they can't find another job, what's to stop them from getting put right back into that cycle again? Y'all see how that could be the eventual reality we find ourselves in, where kind of like everybody just works for some entity that's all checking in on each other and keeping each other safe and healthy. And it's like, whose definition are we using here? Because I don't even see a consistent one. It's very scary to me. But do y'all see what I'm talking about? It's like, okay, we got you into our care because you were not on drugs, you were just homeless. Now we're going to help you get a job placement. Maybe they're helping you place you here and there and everywhere, but couldn't they just say like, oh, we need more prison guard? I mean, people to watch over the sober houses. You see what I'm saying?
Part of that should be financial training, because too many Americans live paycheck to paycheck.
Bingo.
And the more money they make, the more money they spend. And it's a huge problem.
So now Lima has problems with how y'all are spending your money, but don't forget, Lima was begging y'all for your money to help her pay for Amanda's treatment. Remember that? And then she went out and took an impulsive loan, apparently not telling her husband about it.
So I made a rash decision without talking to my husband to take a very large loan out to pay for Amanda's treatment. Like, not anyone can just go and take out a loan for $200,000, you know? So I was in a good financial position where I was able to do that with my credit.
$1,000 to help her.
I'm still paying back the loan that I got. Like, I'm still paying back the loan that I got. I've had to refund all of my orders for the supplements. I had to pay for the supplements.
And now she's mad. Now she's mad that people are spending their money how they want to, but she can go and do whatever dumb shit with her money that she wants to. Y'all see how this works? It's called hypocrisy. Lima can go and have her suicidal ideation. She can actually even start implementing the plan. Nobody locked her up. She didn't even get put in a 5150. But here we are talking about how other people are spending their money after Lima almost wanted to end her life over taking out a huge loan. It's hypocrisy.
And It's because the education is not there. So a part of that should be, financial education with the job training.
Or rather, how can you compel people to go? Because
Kevin is really stuck on this forcing people to go places, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
I do think that
You
the
have
people
to force
who
it.
that
You
the
have
people
to force
who
it.
that
You
the
have
people
to
who
force it. It has to be a choice of the state. You have to
oh wow
force it. You have to. If I can't get somebody to come in and have a meal in a homeless shelter, not commit to being.
How do you make someone show up to do it? You have to force it. This woman said this on purpose, with conviction, with her chest for once. And Kevin rightfully said, oh, wow.
How can you compel people to go?
So the very first thing you're going to do is come over to our hot showers here, and you're going to have the longest, hottest shower that you've ever had. You're going to get a clean pair of underwear because that just makes you feel human again. Okay, so you've got the shower on the left, the toilet on the right, and each and every one of our guests, the very first thing that they're going to do is they're going to get a hot shower, clean clothes, clean underwear, just so they can feel human. Now, once you've had a hot shower, the next bit of magic that we believe in is eating way too much food. But you're going to sit over here and you're going to eat until you are completely full and you basically feel alive again. We have laundry facilities here. We're going to throw all your clothes in the laundry facility, and then you're going to sit down with the real people who make magic. Now, our case managers are the best people in the world because we believe people are pretty awesome. In fact, humans are incredible. They'll overcome about 90% of everything in their lives, but sometimes there's a big blockage, whether it's mental health, an addiction issue, trauma, from past violence, or maybe just a series of incredibly dumb choices. So they're going to sit with a case manager. They're going to work out what is it that's made the person homeless and keeping them there. And then at that moment, they're going to build a case plan for however long it takes. So now you've got a case plan. We're going to bring you into our tiny home village. We actually don't have any empty units at the moment, but we'll sneak down and see if we can find somebody who wants to show them.
Because I do think that
You
the
have
people
to force
who
it.
that
You
the
have
people
to force
who
it.
that
You
the
have
people
to
who
force it. It has to be a choice of the state. You have to
oh wow
force it.
okay.
That's
So your choice is not your choice. It has to be a choice of the state. It's real, y'all. You can't even write this in fiction.
you have to. If I can't get somebody to come in and have a meal in a homeless shelter, not commit
Under this criteria, if you can't force someone to eat, you got to compel them to go into a state-run facility. What the hell is she talking about?
to being clean, not commit to anything, just walk in, eat, and you can leave. Just have a meal. I can't even get them, and I can see them outside
Maybe they don't want your crusted, busted meal. Or maybe every time they go in to have a meal, somebody's trying to get them to go into treatment. Maybe.
the windows, just laying on the streets, and they're so skinny. You have to be able to say, you hurting yourself is you hurting a person. So
Right.
you are not allowed to hurt a person in this country. And because you're making these poor decisions and because you're physically incapable of making, because
According to the brain scan.
it's a proven fact that the brain of someone abusing drugs cannot function in these
It's a proven fact by what? Where's your evidence?
ways until you get clean enough to be able to say, oh, okay, I get it now. Thank
So-
you.
This is similar to why is actually illegal. It's harming somebody. It's harming yourself. Obviously not punishable if it happened, which is very horrible. But in drawing that distinction there, that it is illegal is what I'm trying to say.
But what he's describing is an excessive amount of government and regulatory control, right? He's describing a situation where we have put too many regulations in place where we can't even practically help people anymore. And that's exactly what I'm trying to say we shouldn't keep doing. I agree. We should not say, oh, you're homeless. Oh, here's a bunch of regulations on you. Let's put you in a encampment. Let's put you in an internment camp. Oh, look, you're on. Let me take away your rights and your freedoms because these are all the laws. You shouldn't be allowed to be homeless. There's an anti-homeless law. Kevin is describing the eventuality of that. You can't even give people food anymore, right? Is what he's kind of trying to say. And listen how Lima skirts around it.
If the food sits out and it's meat and then they eat it and then something happens and then you can get sued or whatever the case is. So they have a million things that they have to cover themselves for.
And here's Lima trying to get more regulations in place, right? She's complaining about regulations, but she's like, but people shouldn't be allowed to be homeless. And here's the 3-part plan. And they should have to go to this place and a psych ward and a this and a that. And we got to get insurance companies and we got to get private investments involved and all this stuff. It's like
policies. And I also know someone at Whole Foods told me, but I asked them, I'm like, can you just donate it? And there was a legal liability with them donating it. But at the end of the day, like, the outreach programs, you'll go out and you'll tell people like, hey, you don't have to be clean. You don't have to commit to anything. You try to talk to them. You try to befriend them. It's very hard because a lot of times they don't want, they can't talk, like they can't have a functioning conversation with you.
So if someone can't have a functioning conversation with you, someone who's not even trying to talk to you, then they should be locked up. Okay, got it.
Because their mindset is so off. So it's a really challenging, and
as someone with neurological differences, it really scares me on a personal level that people think stuff like this. Like if someone can't have a conversation with you in the way that you think they should, then you're delegating them to a category of people that should not have their rights.
Because it's a very simple formula, and a lot of people will call it a miracle, and a lot of people will say, oh my God, these cases are so difficult, but it's a very simple formula. We're monitoring and tracking their progress. It's always a 1-year plan. You have certain tiers where they get to keep stepping down in order for them to go in and out of the community. So if you gate the community.
Now she's talking about a gated community. I'm sorry. I don't see how this is different than an internment camp or a prison. I don't see how it's different. And if they're doing job placement, maybe even like a labor camp, like you are not allowed to be homeless. So we're going to put you in this gated community that you are not allowed to leave for at least a year. There's going to be no jury that's going to decide that. It's just going to be because you're homeless. Do y'all see what I'm talking about here?
Each of these units is housing either 1 or 2 people, depending on whether you're an individual or a couple. Now, one of the best things about this site is how each and every person personalizes the unit for themselves. People making a home because there's some pride in ownership here.
Can I film you? Sure. Yeah? Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah, you're more than welcome. Nice. But you keep a nice place. You keep it so neat.
Yeah. Please.
What do you keep? So you have like your closet here?
Yeah, it's my little wardrobe that just very simple.
Very simple.
Yeah.
Do you feel like this is enough space?
You know what? It is, but maybe just a little. I mean, I don't know. Me, like personally, I would, a shower.
Your own shower.
Yeah, my own shower.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you keep things neat, so you maybe like your own.
Real like particular, and certain things. I'm real like ooh. Tidy up, picky up.
Exactly. No, it seems like you have this place organized.
Yeah, I mean, I'm organized. So that's just my
outpatient. So now they get to live in a tiny home, and they get to commute in this community to.
They get to exist in this internment camp.
To a day program. But they shouldn't be allowed to leave the community immediately. They should still be monitored.
Allowed by who? I don't know. Allowed by what? She's never mentioned that.
During, until let's say 2 weeks in, and they've been doing well. So now they get to step down another tier where they're allowed to exit the community and then come back into the community. But it has to be a slow transition. You can't just hand freedom over like that and then boom. You can't just hand freedom over like that.
So you'd almost have to.
She used the word freedom. You can't just hand freedom over like that to people to make their own choices. What?
Figure out who is capable of having that freedom without
But
hurting themselves.
you figure it out. So for us, the way that we figure it out is we figure it out by tracking them through our app. So they answer questions on a regular basis. Lack of interaction raises your risk. So negative interaction raises your risk. If we detect something, even if you say you're fine and we detect that you're not fine, it raises your risk and it shows your.
What determines whether someone can have freedom and leave the gated community, aka prison? And Lima goes, well, the way we decide is we track all their biometric data, and whatever that says, that's what we go with.
Just why exactly your risk is higher. And then as long as you do your telehealth sessions, and as long as you check in, as long as you show up to appointments, and
as long as you do what Lima wants you to do, or the state or whoever it is that's in charge of you at any given moment wants you to do, then it's just fine. But listen what she's saying. As long as you keep all your appointments. Well, I remember the Bam Margera lawsuit, right, with MTV. And he was saying he was having to have like 3 drug tests a day. He was having to check in morning, noon, and night with the doctor. Like it completely consumed his life. And as soon as he made the first mess up, he got kicked off. Now, I'm not saying that is what happened to Bam here. I'm just saying I remember a situation where somebody was like, well, all you had to do was follow all our rules. And it's like, but actually those rules were very difficult to follow. And so here's Lima saying, as long as you go to your doctor and as long as you do your appointments and as long as you're doing everything that, you know, the app says that you should be doing, then you're fine. And one day you'll be able to have your freedom. But what if you don't? You're never free again? This is not acceptable.
As long as you just maintain that, you can go in and out, but it shows that you were hurting yourself. Now you're in a position where you're not hurting yourself and you're checking in to show us that you're not planning on harming yourself and that you're leveraging the resources that we are gifting you. This is a gift. This is not a punishment. The people of this community should always be treated with love and with care and with dignity, and shown that you deserve better. You deserve better. And at the very beginning,
to go into a state-run internment camp and have people tell you what your feelings are and disagree with you whenever you're trying to tell them what your feelings are, and you can never leave unless you have a home to go to, and all of this exists because someone was homeless.
Everyone has a vice and everyone's a work in progress, and as long as that's the foundational understanding, it will be very successful. If it's a place where it's like, oh my God, I don't want to be sent there, it'll be very traumatizing for people. So we want it.
If it's a place where someone doesn't want to be sent there, it will be very traumatizing for people. I think that kind of sounds exactly like what happened the very next month after this recording in June 2021 when Bam Margera was put somewhere where he didn't want to go against his will.
Well, listen, where are you going to take me? I just did 145 days in rehab.
That was probably very traumatizing. And y'all been doing the same thing to him, according to him, for the past year and a half since then.
All the 10 rehabs that I've been to against my will, I can tell you this, I got caught in something called the Florida Shuffle like a year and a half, and I found out every time I escape or leave, my guardian, who I thought was on my side, would find out my location because either I would tell her or she would track down my GPS on my phone and get me re-Baker acted and sent back to the loony bin, and then 10 days of detox when I have nothing to detox.
But here you are on Kevin 1 month before you put him under your care talking about if you put somebody against their will into a treatment, then they will be traumatized.
If it's a place where it's like, oh my God, I don't want to be sent there, it'll be very traumatizing for people. So we want it to be a place of hope and a place of health and education.
It's so human, and it's so devastating to see basically society just that's the please hide it, it's the scum or whatever, you know. It's so wrong. It's so
That's what she's trying to do, Kevin. She just said you shouldn't be allowed to be homeless, and unless you're going to put yourself in a homeless shelter or a rehab, you're going to the psych ward. That's her plan.
wrong.
There's 66,000 people on Skid Row. There's 66,000 people with untapped potential that could add so much value.
Hashtag investments, hashtag markets, hashtag stocks.
And there's a reason that people end up addicted. Like a lot of the people that end up so far deep into addiction are actually so creative and their brain just functions differently. And if
So
you
sad.
can get them to redirect their focus from just feeling better day to day to being creative and focusing on something positive.
And this sounds great. Lima's right. If you could get them to do that, but her entire plan depends on forcing people to do shit.
I don't believe in living day to day to day and one step at a time. And that works.
Because Lima doesn't believe in it, it shouldn't be good for any damn person in the whole state of California. First of all, Lima's entire reform model depends upon people not really being able to make their own choices, even though it kind of looks like they can, right? But what was her opening statement? People should not be allowed to be homeless. And I think that is the bottom line here.
Somebody that is trying to hurt another person, even if that person is themselves, should not be making those decisions and be running wild and free.
She herself has admitted now openly to doing.
But I was like, I'm just going to kill myself.
Now she's trying to, hold them to another standard than the one she was held to. And it's really just giving Handmaid's Tale.
You have to get used to a curfew.
Okay.
But, I've been in prison many times, where I had to have a curfew, and had to go inside myself, So I wasn't used to it, but I had to get used to it again,
What do you do when you have to get inside? You read, you watch?
You can come out, you can come back out, but you can't go out of the facility.
Okay.
But you could, if you had something to do, you just sign out and let them know. And then you come back, by 6 in the morning, you have to come back and check back in. Yeah, sign in and sign out, be here for count, and your meals or whatever. Yeah.
What time is the curfew?
The curfew is from 10 p.m. to 6 in the morning. They check in and check out, and they're not used to, people, telling them what to do and what not to do.
I think that's not freedom?
Yeah, they figure it's not part of freedom. I don't know. I learned to accept it. I had to accept it. This is their play area. You put them in there and you unchain them, and they can just play with the other dogs or yeah.
That's really a full community.
Yeah, it's like a little community. And a lot of people, they don't want to separate from their pets. So it's good. Meet right here on these benches right here. Okay. Yeah, they serve the food right there by the office. You don't always have your next meal, when you're homeless, and when I came here, I was just like, because I have everything here, And they get, I always tell them, I don't want to go nowhere, I don't care.
But that's not an option.
No, it's not. Yeah. They want you on your feet and they want you to get it ready to go. Yeah.
Was this a place that felt like you finally could say?
Exactly. It was, because I could look forward to a place of my own. Yeah, and that's good. Because it's hard to get a place these days. It's hard. And pay that rent? Oh, forget it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you guys for stopping by.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. Whenever you guys want to stop by.
Great. Yeah. Well, hopefully you'll have your own little house the next week.
I know, huh? Yep. Hopefully. Yeah.